Imagine for a second that your life is nothing more than raw material sitting on a cold concrete factory floor.
Yeah, that's quite a visual.
Right. And if you put that material through the standard modern machinery most of us use today, what usually comes off the assembly line, usually it's just burnout, the low-level hum of anxiety, or this constant feeling that you should be, optimizing your morning routine or hacking your inbox.
Absolutely, the endless hustle.
Exactly. But what if there was an entirely different set of machinery? Today, we are opening up a translated essay from 2006 by an author named Hundun Celestial. It's translated by Tongson and edited by Carrier, and it is titled Make a Premium Quality Life.
It's a fascinating piece.
So our mission today is to extract the wisdom from this text. We want to understand exactly how the author claims we can manufacture a better existence. Okay, let's unpack this. The author's core premise here is really bold. They point out that human history has been around for thousands of years, yet nobody is given clear guidance on how to actually achieve a premium quality life.
Well, the word manufacture is really the linchpin here, I think. When we usually talk about self-improvement, we use words like finding yourself.
Right, like it's a scavenger hunt.
Exactly. Which implies that a perfect version of you is just hiding somewhere under a rock, waiting to be uncovered. This text completely rejects that passive idea.
Oh, totally.
It demands that you view your life as an active industrial process. It blends spiritual philosophy with practical ethics. You are both the raw material and the factory worker.
That imagery really caught me off guard at first. I mean, we're so used to thinking of life organically, but the author leans heavily into these production metaphors. They set up this scenario where a factory has the exact same mold and the exact same raw materials,
Right.
yet what comes off the line varies wildly.
Yeah.
Some products are premium, some are inferior, some are defective, and some are just total waste.
And the text points out that the deciding factor in that scenario isn't the mold itself. The mold is identical. The divergence in quality comes down to the technology applied to the material.
The technology and the workers, right?
Yes, the varying levels of professional dedication from the workers operating the machinery.
I was trying to wrap my head around this because it sounds almost entirely mechanical. But then the author applies the exact same logic to nature. You can have a field planted with the exact same seeds, but the crop yield depends completely on the farmer's diligence.
That's a great point. Or take uncarved jade. Uncarved jade is really just a heavy rock.
Right, it doesn't look like much.
Not at all. It doesn't matter how flawless the internal stone is. If it isn't subjected to the friction of skillful processing and carving, it just never becomes a shining ornament.
The friction is the point.
Exactly. The text argues that human history is filled with endless philosophical debates about human nature, but there has been this glaring lack of a clear, actionable instruction manual for applying that necessary friction.
So the author's goal is to provide the operating procedures to turn that rock into a gem. Before we get to those operating procedures, I really want to look at the raw material itself. Because I was reading the author's definition of human nature, and honestly, I got a bit stuck.
How so?
Well, the text states that everyone shares these inborn natures. But it doesn't just say we have human nature. It says we possess the natures of God, Buddha, celestial beings, matter, animals, and humanity. All of that.
So a very comprehensive list.
It is. And how do we hold all of those at once? Like, are we supposed to be actively killing off the animal and material parts to become more divine?
I get why you'd think that, but that is a common misinterpretation of spiritual texts. The idea that the physical or animal self is inherently evil and must be destroyed. But think about the factory again.
Okay.
A factory doesn't destroy its raw materials, it refines them. The author presents a holistic view. We contain the divine, the animalistic, the purely material, and the spiritual simultaneously. We're this complex bundle of raw potentials.
So the animal nature isn't the bad guy.
No, the animal nature isn't the enemy. It's just uncarved. It operates on pure instinct and survival, while the divine nature operates on profound connection.
Oh, I see. So it's a bit like having a 3D printer.
A 3D printer.
Yeah, think about it for the listener. Everyone gets the same base machine and the same raw spool of plastic filament. That plastic is our shared inborn nature, those divine and animal codes we all carry.
Ooh, I like that.
But the final object depends entirely on the variables you plug in.
Yes, and the text specifically names those variables, actually. Your era, your family environment, your education, and your level of self-motivation.
Right. So just like calibrating a 3D printer, if the room's too cold or you rush the process or you just input the wrong design file, you end up with a stringy, defective mess. even if the plastic was perfectly good.
Exactly. Our job is to manage the variables we can control to print a better life.
Which naturally leads to the obvious question. If we are trying to avoid becoming the defective waste product on the factory floor, what are the actual specifications of the premium product?
Well, the author gives a very explicit list of 8 characteristics of a premium life.
And looking through them, some seem impossibly utopian to me. I mean, one of them is having only love and absolutely zero hatred in your heart. Zero hatred.
It's a tall order.
I look at the news for 5 minutes and I struggle with that.
Hatred, in the context of this manufacturing metaphor, is essentially a corrosive element in the machinery. If you allow it into the system, it just degrades the final
It
product.
ruins the gears.
Right. And the text pairs that requirement with other massive interpersonal traits, bringing joy and hope to many people, being diligent, simple, kind, honest, and trustworthy.
There is also this rule about radical accountability. A premium person never hurts anyone. But the text does acknowledge the reality that accidents happen.
Yeah, human error is inevitable.
Right, so it says if you do cause unintentional pain or suffering, you must compensate your victims fairly. You can't just apologize and move on. You actually have to balance the scales.
It requires a profound level of self-awareness. And alongside these interpersonal traits, the text outlines a deep spiritual dimension. You must revere the greatest creator, revere life, and the author actually puts the word life in all capital letters, and revere nature.
It says you must be cultivated and civilized.
Yes, loving many while being loved in return.
I want to push back on one of the very first characteristics listed, though, because I think a lot of people listening today are going to have a visceral reaction to it.
Let's hear it.
The text says they must create something for society. What they attain must be far less than what they contribute. Now, in our modern hustle culture, giving far more than you get sounds like a one-way ticket to complete burnout.
Oh, definitely.
We are constantly told to know our worth, to negotiate, to make sure we are getting our fair share, if not more. How is attaining far less than we contribute not just a recipe for getting exploited?
Well, what's fascinating here is that reaction makes perfect sense because modern culture defines success through an extraction model.
An extraction model.
Yeah. We are taught to measure a premium life by what we accumulate: wealth, status, resources, time. In an extraction model, if you give more than you take, you run a deficit. You burn out.
Exactly. You go bankrupt emotionally.
But the author is operating on an ecosystem model.
Okay. How does the ecosystem model prevent burnout?
Think of a mature oak tree in a forest. It doesn't measure its success by how much water and sunlight it can hoard at the expense of the saplings around it.
Right. It just grows.
Its intrinsic value is the shade it provides, the oxygen it creates, the root systems that stabilize the soil for other plants. It contributes exponentially more to the ecosystem than the raw materials it consumes.
Oh, wow.
The author is suggesting that human beings are designed to function the exact same way. The joy and the vitality of a premium life come from the act of contributing, not the act of extracting.
So the burnout only happens if your internal goal is still extraction. Like, if you are keeping score, feeling like you are owed something for your good deeds, you'll just be exhausted. But if your fundamental goal is contribution, the act of giving actually becomes the fuel.
It completely reorients your relationship with the world around you. You are no longer fighting for scarce resources. You are a generator of value.
Okay, theoretically, being this contributing tree in the forest sounds great. But if I'm sitting in a frustrating meeting or dealing with someone who is actively undermining me, having zero hatred and giving more than I get feels completely out of reach.
It's much easier said than done.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Does the author actually give us tools to do this? Or is this just philosophical wishful thinking? How do we actually carve the jade?
This is where the text moves from ideology to a very practical 8-step action plan. The first step addresses exactly what you're talking about: the friction of daily life. It starts with the environment and the company you keep.
Oh, right. The author uses this incredibly vivid proverb for this step. He who stays near cinnabar gets red. He who stays near ink gets stained black.
Cinnabar is a bright red mineral used for pigment. The metaphor implies that you are highly permeable. You cannot help but absorb the qualities of your environment.
So if you hang around ink, you get dark.
Exactly. If you want to have zero hatred, you simply cannot surround yourself with ink. The text explicitly instructs you to associate with cultivated, positive people, and you have to actively avoid negative, pessimistic people who just complain and carry anger.
So step one is basically a ruthless curation of your physical and social inputs.
Yes, and once you've done that, the text moves to your actions. It tells you to be a lifelong, diligent worker, to attain fruits through your own labor, and to never be greedy for things that aren't yours.
And it extends on that non-extraction model we discussed earlier.
It does. When you help people, the text says you must not haggle over every ounce. You contribute your talents unconditionally.
No transactional favors,
Yeah.
no keeping a ledger of who owes who. And that extends into another step about personal relationships that I honestly found incredibly difficult to digest.
Which one?
The one about dealing with benefits. Whether it's with siblings, friends, neighbors, or coworkers, the author says you should actually lag behind. Like, take a step back. Let others win. Yield the benefits to them.
Yielding is a profoundly difficult practice for the modern ego.
It really is. Letting a coworker take the spotlight for a project you helped with, or letting a sibling get the larger share of an inheritance, that requires suppressing a massive amount of self-importance. Why is yielding so crucial to manufacturing this premium life?
Because yielding removes friction from the machinery. When you constantly fight for the front of the line, you are generating conflict, resentment, and eventually that hatred the author warns against.
You're just grinding the gears.
Right. By intentionally taking a step back, you neutralize conflict before it even begins. You are proving to yourself and others that you are not bound by the extraction model.
The text applies a similar kind of release to romantic and familial love, too. It says, never put chains on the people you love. On the contrary, allow them the widest berth and the most freedom.
Which goes against how we usually think of love.
Yeah, we often define love by possession. We say things like, you are mine.
The author challenges that deeply. A premium life requires letting go of possession. It means helping others succeed without a trace of jealousy, allowing them to grow in whatever direction they choose, even if it doesn't serve your immediate needs.
Okay, so we've covered environment, work, yielding, and love. There are spiritual steps, too, like walking the way of the greatest creator and revering nature. But I really want to zero in on step number 7.
The friendship metric.
Yes, out of all these broad, sweeping philosophical guidelines, the author just drops in this highly specific, almost quirky metric. Step 7 is, have more than 8 bosom friends who treat each other with sincerity.
It's very specific.
It is. In today's world, having 1 or 2 deep friends feels like a win. 8 non-transactional, sincere friendships. That is a monumental task. Here's where it gets really interesting to me. Why exactly more than 8? Not a handful, not a dozen?
Well, while sociologists might debate the exact cognitive limits of human social circles, in the context of this essay, the number 8 serves as a rigorous proof of concept.
A proof of concept for the rest of the steps.
Consider the alternative. You could sit alone in a room, meditate all day, and convince yourself that you have zero hatred, that you are perfectly willing to yield benefits, and that you give unconditionally.
Because nobody is there to challenge you.
Right. You cannot actually test those qualities in isolation. A premium life is deeply, fundamentally communal.
So the external network basically proves the internal state.
Precisely. If you have successfully carved your raw material into a premium state, if you actually don't haggle, if you actually don't put chains on people, the natural, unavoidable byproduct of that behavior will be a robust network of people who trust you deeply.
That makes total sense.
If you cannot point to a solid group of more than 8 people who know you and love you sincerely, then you haven't actually achieved the other steps, regardless of how enlightened you feel on your own. The metric forces you to look outside your own head and measure your actual impact on others.
It's the ultimate reality check. I mean, if no one wants to be around your cinnabar, you might just be ink.
Exactly. It prevents philosophical self-deception. Your external relationships are the mirror reflecting your internal manufacturing process.
That concept of mirrors actually bridges us perfectly to the conclusion of the essay. We've spent this whole time talking about the external world, how we treat coworkers, who we hang out with, how we deal with friends.
The outside stuff.
Right. But the author concludes by flipping the entire paradigm inward, introducing the metaphor of a kaleidoscope.
This is where the physical manufacturing metaphors give way to a purely psychological mechanism. The text states, life is a kaleidoscope. The kinds of flowers that will blossom depend on its physical structure, and the kind of life that one can achieve depends on the structure of their consciousness.
I want to make sure I fully understand this. In a physical kaleidoscope, you have those little loose fragments of colored glass tumbling around at the end of the tube. Right?
Yes.
And those glass pieces represent the external world, the chaos, the random events, the things we just cannot control.
That is the perfect way to look at it. You cannot control the traffic, the economy, or the sudden emergencies life throws at you. Those are just random fragments of glass.
But the beauty you see when you look through the tube, those intricate, perfect flowers that blossom, that doesn't come from the glass itself. It comes from the mirrors inside the tube.
Yeah.
The mirrors give the chaos its structure.
And the author argues that the core issue of our lives isn't the uncontrollable objective environment. It is our internal quality, the structure of our consciousness.
Recurrent mirrors.
Yes. If your internal mirrors are aligned with love, reverence, and unconditional generosity, then no matter what random fragments of chaos the world shakes into your view, your consciousness will reflect them into a beautiful premium pattern.
To illustrate how we build that internal structure, the author shares these really poetic proverbs. As you approach the mountain, you will learn the tweeting of birds. As you approach the water, you will know the free swimming of fish. As you worship the Buddha, you will acquire the nature of the Buddha.
How do those proverbs land for you, considering the modern listener who is trying to structure their own consciousness?
You know, it makes me think of the algorithms that govern our digital lives.
Oh, that's an interesting comparison.
Think about a social media feed. If you constantly click on outrage and anger, the algorithm learns that structure. It assumes that is what you want, and it feeds you more of it until your entire digital world just looks like a war zone.
It becomes an echo chamber.
Exactly. And the author's essentially saying our subconscious works the exact same way. If you actively choose to approach the mountain, to approach the water, stand near the cinnabar instead of the ink, you are effortlessly programming your subconscious. What you voluntarily surround yourself with literally builds the mirrors inside your kaleidoscope.
It is a profound realization of neuroplasticity, really, written back in 2006. And it leads to the author's final, remarkably hopeful promise. The text states that as long as we have the will to make a premium quality life, we will realize this ideal unconsciously. It becomes an imperceptible process.
Wait, really? Meaning we don't have to white-knuckle our way through every single interaction for the rest of our lives?
Yeah.
We don't have to, consciously force ourselves to yield benefits every single time.
Intention creates the structure, and the structure eventually does the work. If you dedicate yourself to the action plan, if you consciously practice giving, sincerity, and yielding, your internal mirrors slowly shift into the correct alignment.
And then what?
Once that structure is set, the beautiful patterns happen automatically. You don't have to force the glass to make a flower. It just becomes your natural default state of being.
So wrapping this all up and speaking directly to you, the listener, a premium life isn't a luxury item. It isn't a biohack or a productivity app that squeezes 3 extra hours out of your day.
No, definitely not.
According to Hunden Celestial, it is a state of being that must be painstakingly manufactured on the factory floor of your daily life. It takes a friction of diligent labor. It requires giving the people you love absolute freedom. It requires absorbing the cost of yielding to others.
And it requires consciously building the mirrors of your mind to focus on love rather than extraction. In a world defined by a constant low-level anxiety about whether we are achieving enough, this text offers a deeply grounding alternative. It reminds us that we possess immense agency. We are the factory workers of our own existence, capable of refining our chaotic human material into something that provides profound, lasting benefit to the ecosystem around us.
So what does this all mean for you today? I want you to think back to the very beginning of this deep dive, where the text says we all have inborn natures. We have the natures of God and Buddha, but we also have the natures of matter and animals.
All those raw materials.
Right. If you successfully follow this manual, if you painstakingly structure your kaleidoscope of consciousness to achieve this premium life of pure love, zero hatred, and endless giving, what actually happens to your animal and material natures?
That's the real question.
Are they carved away completely, left on the factory floor like the rough, useless edges of a gemstone? Or do they remain inside the tube, just becoming a balanced, beautifully integrated part of your mind's complex pattern? Think about that the next time you feel those different natures pulling at you. And remember, you are the one holding the chisel.